I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember, bacon makes everything better.
For the victory lap, though.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Fifth Quarter. I'm Mike Waddell, along with the coach Jim Collins, and each week we're right here on the North Carolina Sports Network, talking football and having fun. And Jim, it is always more fun to win games than it is to lose things. So you know that the folks at Appalachian State and NC State and North Carolina and Duke are all feeling really good right now about their weekends. I don't know if East Carolina or Wake Forest are feeling particularly rosy about theirs.
Let me say this, Mike. All those years that I experienced all those Saturdays and those Saturday nights, those cold beers went down much easier after a win than they did a loss. And sleep came much easier. So there's some sleepless nights out there for some folks right now.
Let's talk about some of the games involving our big 1A teams right here at the top of the show. Let's talk about North Carolina State. One of the first games to go off on Saturday over at the Carter, and still Grayson McCall and the Wolfpack offense just not hitting on any type of synchronicity. More rhythm in that little joke than in all of the quarters combined, played by the Wolfpack up into the end of the first half on Saturday, where they find themselves inexplicably trailing Louisiana Tech at home. Dave Doran has to be pulling out his hair. He doesn't have much of that left, but he has to be very frustrated. Even though they did get the win, they certainly did not do it by the plan laid out over at the football center.
Well, once again, Mike, they struggled on offense until and I have to be the first one to say that I was very impressed with the young freshman that came in the game. I thought he just created such energy for their entire team because they were, let's face it, they were lethargic on both sides of the ball before he entered the game. And I hope McCall is healthy and they can make a decision on what they want to do. But this kid really, Bailey really brought some energy to what they wanted to do. They ran the ball better. Right. They threw it. He was a running threat. Their defense was energetic, had some big plays there. So I thought he was a very, very positive thing for the Wolfpack.
I thought he played really well. It was almost like they played with another gear once that C.J. Bailey got into the ballgame. And sometimes, you know, quarterbacks just inspire a little bit differently, and sometimes it just hits at the right time. And we'll talk a little bit later in today's show about North Carolina State and specifically the position of quarterback and how the best laid plans of transfers often give way to the guy that's been there all along. Let's move now to FCS and the games from over the weekend. It was Delaware drubbing North Carolina A&T 42-13, not the way that the Aggies want to go into the upcoming Aggie Eagle Classic this week in Durham. Now, North Carolina Central obviously lost. We talked about their loss to North Carolina 45-10. It was Charlotte 27, Gardner-Webb 26, Rhode Island over Campbell 21-9, Western Carolina 24-17 better than Elon, and Davidson 42-12 over Point. Let's talk about that Elon game because that's Western Carolina coming off a very disappointing loss to Campbell, but after they had just played NC State really tough in the opening weekend. Jim, we've seen this a lot. Team has embarrassing loss one week, they come back with no holds barred the next.
Well, the Elon Western Carolina game was an interesting game. At Elon, Elon led almost the entire game until the fourth quarter. Had a blocked field goal late in the fourth quarter. The quarterback scored late in the game to seal the win for the Catamounts. As I look at my stats here, the Phoenix had 21 first downs in the game. but they were only 2 of 11 on third down in the game. Phoenix had 424 yards of offense to 370 for the Catamounts. I think that's one that Tony Trisciani, the head coach at Elon, will really look back on and feel like they let it get away from them.
Tough loss right there for the Phoenix. Now on to Division II. It was Elizabeth City State 20-0 over the Flying Fleet of Erskine. Johnson C. Smith, the Bulls, go over the top of Lincoln of Pennsylvania, 52-6. Wingate Bulldogs, 21-7 over 12th ranked Delta State, otherwise known, Jim, as the Fighting Okra. Number 13, Lenore Ryan gets the 38-17 tilt over Tiffin. It was Barton 24, Chowan 20, Livingstone 23-21, better than Allen. Winston-Salem State, the Ramley is cheering loud after the overtime win, 19-13 over Ohio Dominican. Valdosta State bested Fayetteville State's Broncos 34-0, and Catawba got the best of Shaw 37-28. And then coming up, Jim, we talk about the Division III scores, and Everett gets the best of Greensboro. That was a 27-20 match. Brevard, they were absolutely decimated by the Twisters team from Hampton, Sydney, 51-30. Ferrum over North Carolina Wesleyan, 28-24. And again, breaking news. The Guilford College Quakers go to 2-0, baby. 2-0 for the Quakes.
I can't believe you're not representing again tonight. But let's back up to the Wesleyan game. I found this very, very interesting. Dumapol had 17 receptions for 258 yards in that game. Now that's unbelievable. I would love to see the video of that game. The quarterback threw for 337 yards, so 258 of it was to one receiver. I believe I might have found a way to double cover him at some point in time.
That's Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell, and when we come back after this short timeout and this word from the North Carolina Port Council, we'll go inside both North Carolina and Duke's big wins over the weekend. The Tar Heels over North Carolina Central, and Duke got the best of the UConn Huskies. That's next, right here. It's the fifth quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network.
In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network.
Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I should overcome. What for?
Back here on the fifth quarter, he's Jim Collins. I am Mike Waddell. And Jim, football in the Forest on Saturday night. It was a short drive for Trey Oliver and the North Carolina Central Eagles over to Kenan Stadium in Chapel Hill to face Mac Brown's Tar Heels. And this game was pretty tight going all the way into the fourth quarter. It saw everything that you would expect. Omarion Hampton going over 200 yards against the Eagles, who don't have the athleticism to keep up with North Carolina. But maybe not on your Tar Heel football bingo card that we'd already be by game 3 of the season to the third quarterback taking meaningful snaps in a game. And lo and behold, Connor Harrell went to the sideline early in this one. And Jim, out came Jacoby Criswell, who I know you were on the same sideline with and part of the team there at Carolina just a few years ago before he went off to go to Arkansas.
Yeah, Jacoby is an interesting quarterback, interesting prospect there. And I find it very interesting that they have made the decision to give him reps at this point in time. And he had some catching up to do. Obviously, he didn't get there till the beginning of summer camp. And I think he had some conditioning issues to overcome. Extremely strong arm, good young man. And I think he brings a lot of things to the table. They have some decisions to make. And just listening to Coach Brown's post-game Press conference, it sounds like they're going to play both of them, and they're going to live with the guy that has the hot hand.
The other undefeated blue team in the triangle is, of course, the Duke Blue Devils, and they get the win at the expense of UConn by the score of 26-21. And again, it was Duke's defense, Jim, really stepping up and answering the call from Manny Diaz.
Well, big fourth quarter for the Blue Devils. They were actually trailing going into the fourth quarter, but I have to give credit now. Their receivers, are just playing so well. Jordan Moore and Eli Pankel and those guys, they're just playing so well for them. And Malachi is actually making some good throws. They actually threw for about 250. Let me check my stats here. He was 28 of 43 for 267 in the game, and some of it came in really, really critical areas of the game. So as we move further into this now, Duke has to go to Middle Tennessee this week. North Carolina has James Madison at home this week, and then on Saturday, September 28th, the Duke Carolina game in Durham is coming up very quickly. And as we both know, that's probably going to be the first real test for both of them.
That's going to be a sight to see, and really an elimination game if you look at it like that. I don't think Duke can take Middle Tennessee State, the Blue Raiders, on the road in Murfreesboro lightly. That's going to be an electric atmosphere, much like you would have anytime the big-time team comes onto the smaller school's campus. That's Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell. We're crazy about football because it's a lot of fun to talk about. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about the Charlotte win over Gardner-Webb. Big comeback right there for Bitpoji and the 49ers. We'll talk about Appalachian State going to Greenville and getting the big win over East Carolina. We will also revisit Wake Forest and their loss to number 5 Ole Miss, curiously enough, on the Demon Deacons homecoming. And we'll lead off our next segment talking NC State football and how the Wolfpack is rallying behind yet another backup quarterback coming in to save the day. That's coming up next right here. You're tuned into the fifth quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network.
I am a better person and a more effective business owner for having known and learned from Emily Parks over many years now. Emily's company, Organize for Success, helps multi-passionate business owners and executives bring harmony to all the layers of their lives, from work to side projects, from friends and family to hobbies, community, and beyond. With Emily's help, you too can make every minute matter. She helps you determine what earns your time and how to efficiently accomplish what matters. One of the many things I love about Emily is that she does not impose her will on her clients. She listens to them. That way she can better help them cultivate the lives they want to live. You can set up a complimentary call with Emily today by visiting organizeforsuccess.com.
Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I should overcome.
Back here on the fifth quarter, Mike Waddell, Jim Collins on the North Carolina Sports Network. Let's talk some NC State football and the Wolfpack. After having a very tough outing against the University of Tennessee, they want to come back. They want to get on the right track, and they have that bye game right there. The team that they're paying to come in and play a game at the Carter. We're talking about Louisiana Tech. And the Texters did not come in and lay down. They were bad dogs, and they went right at the Wolves. But in the end, NC State gets the win, and the final score there, 30-20. Now, we talked about it earlier in our lead segment. Grayson McCall, the big transfer quarterback from Coastal Carolina, is benched in this game. Maybe he's hurt. We never heard any real clarification on that. Either way, he's not running the Wolfpack offense on the field. And if he is hurt, we really hope that he's back soon because he's a heck of a nice kid. But so far this season, Jim, we talked about it. The NC State offense has just not been hitting on all cylinders. They're scoring off pick sixes more than they're scoring on either runs or throws. And that's bad news for the offense. But this new guy comes in today, CJ Bailey, and boy, he went on a tear at the control for 3 second-half scoring drives. And in the end, In the late part of the fourth quarter, the Wolfpack pulls away from Louisiana Tech. What were your impressions of Dave Doran's Wolfpack?
Well, obviously, I was impressed with C.J. Bailey. 13 out of 20 for 156. Threw a pick, 4 rushes for 27 yards. I think he has the ability, even though he's 6'6", I think he has the ability to help your offense with his feet. But the energy that he brought to the rest of the team was what really impressed me when he entered the game. They just seem to take on a completely different tempo of how they played the game and their energy. And he got the receivers involved in the game, which I have not seen the receivers really involved as we go along. Ran the ball really well in short yardage and inside the red zone, but still struggled overall to run the ball. But I really like where they were in the third and fourth quarter of that game. Obviously not looking ahead, but this is a big week for them as they go to Clemson to play the Tigers in Death Valley.
The Textile Bowl is always a hotly contested matchup. And in this one, boy, you don't want to take another early season loss to an Orange team. But do you think there's any PTSD after that Tennessee Orange ran all over the Wolfpack that they're going to see Clemson coming down that hill? I mean, what's it like to be at the bottom of that hill and watch the Tigers running at you?
Well, I've done it a couple of times, never had much success in that stadium. And, when I in the early years back when I was at Duke, I'll tell you a quick story. We weren't very good, and we had a couple of guys go down there and try to motion them down the hill. We said, "You guys get your butt back over on this bench. We don't need you inviting them down the hill. They're going to come down and get after us as it is." So tough place to play, interesting place to play, great atmosphere.
It is. And I tell you, as you go to the atmospheres around the state, it's hard to find one much better than East Carolina. I've been to East Carolina for a game back 24 years ago that I went to one last year. And now I get a chance to go over this past weekend to see Appalachian State and East Carolina go at it. And I tell you, it was a dreary day weather-wise. It felt like, a good day for the Pirates. I mean, the wind was smicking around, little breeze coming in. You could almost hear somebody saying, "Arg," you hear a parrot scowl in the background. And then, boy, I tell you one thing, as I'm about to go to sleep on that night story right there, it's about what Mike Houston and the Pirates did to Sean Clark and the Mountaineers, because Appalachian was asleep in the first quarter. They were playing in another realm of awareness, just did not come out of the locker room very strong at all. And Mike Houston and the Pirates made them pay. It was 16-0 before we could, start to go back and forth on our text messages. But I think both of us had pretty much chalked this one up to the purple and gold at that point.
There's no doubt. I had not even tuned in. I was still watching the ending of a couple of other games on TV. And then when all of a sudden I looked at my phone and it's 16-0. I said, I need to tune into this one now. But a great job by Sean Clark and the staff for the Mountaineers to come back and play so well. 505 yards of offense, 424 yards passing, 32 out of 47. Did throw 2 picks in the game, and they had 3 turnovers. So it'll be an interesting and a short week for the Mountaineers this week, as you and I have talked about earlier. They've got a Thursday night game coming up and at home, so it'll be an interesting week for those guys. But a great win. Mike Houston has to be extremely disappointed. They started out strong and then struggled to 324 yards of offense, 226 passing, but they could not run the football. 98 yards rushing in the game. And I'm a firm believer as an old defensive coach, if you can't run it, then we can drop enough people to cause problems with you in the passing game. So got to be able to run the football to win these days, I believe.
So, right now we just got our ass kicked for 3.5 hours. So that was an ass whipping. It's a good football team, and we just got to get our guys back, and we've got a lot of games ahead of us. Like I told him in the locker room, I still think we have a chance to have a good football team, but this is a football team that has a very, very small margin of error. And when we blow a coverage, in 21 we could recover from that. This team is going to have to play really, really good football to not have those things happen.
So right there it is, Jim. I guess what we can take from that is that Dave Clawson doesn't believe that they're spending enough money on football players at Wake Forest, that Ole Miss is doing a very good job of buying their players, and that his team is really not talented.
I think he means that the Grove Collective is a lot better than I don't even know what the Wake Forest Collective is, but as you look at that Ole Miss roster, they signed a bunch of good players from all over the country, and Lane is quite creative in what he does offensively and how he builds a program. And 649 yards of total offense to 265 yards passing and 46 rushes for the Demon Deacons. It was not a good night, and if anybody wants to go back again and re-listen to that little clip that we just played, I would say you have a very frustrated Dave Clawson at this point in time.
For sure. And look, it's hard to work in the football office at Wake Forest anyway, because that is a very tough academic school. I'm not making excuses, but it is. I mean, just the foreign language requirement alone is a real challenge for a lot of people. It would have been for me. But you knew what the rules were, Dave. So I don't really have a lot of empathy for him because he knew the rules going in. And it just seems like you're stating the obvious at this point. And if I'm one of his players right now, I'm sitting back, kind of like if I were an offensive lineman at Colorado after the game a couple weeks ago against Nebraska. I just kind of feel like, hey, man, we're getting ready to go to work. I mean, maybe it's the challenge. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, the challenge of deciding where you put your money with a football program. Do you put it with a coach who is less and less involved in the overall product as the years go on because of the diversification of the game and all that implies? Or do you put it on the field? I mean, Dave might be making a case, but it might not be the case that ends up being one that he likes the answer to, because you still got to win games. And if you can't win games, the people that call the shots, in this case, John Curry, they'll find somebody who can.
Well, Mike, I think the thing that's very interesting as we analyze where college football is, and we talked about this a week ago, at this point in time, the Wake Forest football program, the Duke football program, the University of North Carolina, Alabama, whomever you are, technically they cannot pay a player at this point in time. The monies that players are making now come from the collectives and outside interest, and their name, image, and likeness is how we look at it. It's going to be tough on a lot of people. That's why college football and college sports in general are moving to the point where we're gonna have the haves and the have-nots even more. Because unless you can pay players enough and you can hold on to your roster, not only do you have to get new players, but you got to make sure you can hold on to the roster that you have. It's a high degree of difficulty, and I've never seen Dave Clawson so frustrated as he was in the post-game press conference, even to the point where he was questioning Ole Miss in their strategy of faking injuries, and maybe they were, who knows, but that did not create 649 total yards. So
that was a frustrated coach just trying to find something.
Yeah, that's a very frustrated coach, and I understand where he's coming from. We played, I can't remember whether it was 2009 or 2010 when I was on David Cutcliffe's staff at Duke, and we for some reason brought the Crimson Tide of Alabama and Nick Saban into Wallace Wade Stadium, filled the place with Alabama fans, and we had no chance at that point in time. I understand where Coach Clawson's coming from, and it is highly frustrating to know that you have to play your absolute best, and they have to help you in the game for you to have a chance to win.
It kind of makes you wonder why Wake Forest would continue to put millions after millions of dollars towards a football program if they know that they're exponentially less likely able to compete like they did under Jim Grove whenever he was there and got them to an ACC championship game and on to a big-time bowl game.
Mike, again, I reflect back on those years, and those were great years. Jim Grove was an excellent football coach and had a great staff and did those things. But the lay of the land is so different now than it was then. At that point in time, you couldn't. There was no NIL. There were no collectives out there. Players were not being paid. You're just you know what I mean, Mike. Okay, they weren't. I'll say this: the majority of players were not making six figures plus.
Yeah, no doubt.
At that point in time, especially in the Big Four. Of Duke, North Carolina State, and Wake Forest. So they were in a very competitive atmosphere at that point in time. It is a completely different world at this point. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen to a lot of schools that are Power 5 schools right now. Where are they going to go in the future? Vanderbilt 3 weeks ago had the big upset of Virginia Tech. Well, guess what? They lose a game this past week that they never should have lost. Toledo goes to Mississippi State and beats Mississippi State in Starkville. Explain that one. I can't explain it. But this game's getting tougher and tougher, and the money that's created is going to make it even more difficult as we go down the road.
So far this year, I've been to games at App State. I've been to East Carolina, and both of those places have incredible tailgating atmospheres. Also went to a game at Clemson in the 1 week off to see Appalachian play, and Clemson has a great tailgating atmosphere. You could even say that Appalachian has a great tailgating atmosphere. NC State has a great tailgating atmosphere. Who doesn't? Charlotte, Duke, and North Carolina. And that's part of being a football school. Just because you want to win at football or that you hire and pay a coach a lot of money doesn't mean that you're committed to winning when you know now that it's not necessarily the buildings and all these other things that are going to make a difference. It's paying for the Jimmies and the Joes. I mean, I know a lot of great recruiters who can't coach that have jobs. I don't know a lot of great coaches who can't recruit that have jobs at a full-time status, even though about anybody who can walk and talk can get a job right now on some of these staffs. The damn staffs are so huge and the opportunities are so many, but wow. I mean, the commitment that is needed to win is something that is next level than any of our state schools, I think, have ever put forward.
Well, again, Mike, we're at a point where college football and playing at the highest level is a 365, 24/7 job.
Right.
Because people are going to say, well, how was it different before? There were periods of time when recruiting was dead, and there's still dead recruiting periods. But there's really not a dead period in recruiting right now. Recruiting is 365 now, and it's the lifeblood of it, because I don't care how good a football coach you are. We're all better coaches with really good players. And you used this statement a second ago. The Jimmies and the Joes are what makes this thing work. Now, can some coaches coach the Jimmies and Joes better than others? The answer to that is yes. But the guys that really get it done are the ones that have the best players, without a doubt.
If you had a grandson right now and he was a quarterback coming out of high school, maybe you'll say he's a 3-star player, could go to a Carolina or a Duke and, be on the scout team for a couple of years and then maybe get a chance to compete? Or he has the chance to go somewhere and play right away? Where do you tell him to go?
Well, based on the statistics across the country right now, I tell him to go somewhere where he can play early, and then he'll have, if he plays well enough, he'll have the opportunity to go to one of those schools, because they're all recruiting outside their bounds right now. They're recruiting the transfer portal up one side and down the other. I think like 70 quarterbacks are transfer quarterbacks across this country at this point in time. So unless he's a 5-star guy like Arch Manning, I thought Arch Manning was outstanding in his relief role last weekend or yesterday for Texas. But unless you're that kind of guy, I'm not sure you don't go somewhere where you can play and create playing time and statistics, and then have your opportunity down the road.
That's Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell. And when we come back here on the fifth quarter, we're going to go inside our fabulous 15 from North Carolina footballnews.com and their editor-in-chief, the one, the only, Eric Lusk. He comes up on the other side of this timeout right here, all across the Old North State. This is the North Carolina Sports Network.
Whether you are moving locally, nationally, or even internationally, and whether you're a residential or commercial customer, please consider our friends at XL Moving and Storage, an award-winning Allied Van Lines agent with offices in Greensboro and Raleigh. Thanks to their 25 years of experience helping North Carolinians all across the state with their moving and storage needs, XL has become the trusted hometown North Carolina moving services company. Our good friends Jim Dorsett and Jody Hatley, along with their hardworking staff, offer customized, tailored relocation and storage solutions to the people of North Carolina and beyond. Visit them online today at xlms.com.
Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I should overcome. What for?
You're listening to the fifth quarter here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I'm Mike Waddell. The man in the middle is the coach, Jim Collins. And joining us on the screen to our right, he is the editor-in-chief of the North Carolina Football News. We're talking, of course, about Eric Lusk. And Lusk, welcome back to another edition of the fifth quarter.
Man, it's great to be here. It was a crazy busy weekend in our state. 25 games, 21 of them played within our state's borders. So yeah, it was a full weekend, to say the least.
We've talked a lot about the big games so far on the Division I level, the football bowl subdivision. Let's go to the football championship subdivision. And Delaware over North Carolina A&T, 42-13. The Aggies are continuing to struggle here in 2024.
Yeah, they. I think they played Winston-Salem State. Got fired up for that a couple of weeks ago. And I think it's just going to be a struggle for them until I think they're building something. They definitely are building a solid run game. That's kind of what they want to do. But Delaware is probably one of the top 5 teams in the CAA. So they're not ready for that level yet. But I think you will see. I think you'll see some improvement this year from A&T. Next week we get the A&T Central game. So all one of those throw the records out rivalry days. So I think they'll come to play for that one definitely.
Up in the Coastal Athletic Association, fresh off their win over SoCon foe Western Carolina, the Campbells trotted up to Rhode Island, but the Rams rebuked their visitors from Cullowhee by the count of 21-9. Campbell dominated the time of possession game, but they just weren't able to get past Darth Maul. This is my guy, Jim Fleming, the head coach of the Rams, is a former North Carolina coordinator and the coordinator for the Akron Zips when we worked together on the 2005 MAC championship team. But he prides himself on strong defense, and Rhode Island definitely played that on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, definitely. Same thing that you did. I looked at the stat sheet and thought, why wasn't this a closer game? But that's one of those cases where Campbell, you got to convert. You got to put the ball in the end zone, get points on the board. They dominated. They had, again, statistically speaking, they did okay. But as coach will tell you, sometimes stats do not tell the story, and you can't score points against a tough defense. And And they came up with those opportunistic plays against Western. Were not able to do that against Rhode Island.
Western Carolina back in the win column, as we talked about earlier in the show, 24-17 over Elon. Which team is Western Carolina this year? The one that played very tight with North Carolina State, or the one that loses to Campbell?
Yeah, they apparently they were missing some starters. I saw a post on Twitter Sunday or this morning, whatever, that they were missing starters for that game. I think it really helped. They gutted it out. If you can, their quarterback, All-American, he did not have a touchdown pass. And if you would have told me, does Western have a shot if he doesn't throw at least one TD pass, I would probably say no. But the fact that they gutted out the win, blocked a kick, returned that for a touchdown, and then there was a play where Cole Gonzalez, the quarterback, went airborne to score a touchdown on a running play. When your quarterback's going to do that, I think they're going to get some of their mojo back. Problem is they go to Montana this week, and Montana's a top 5 FCS team. So again, this could be one of those chances where they're going to find their stride and get some of their healthy guys back, and maybe they can make a run up there. But yeah, still everything's in front of them. The conference is there. I don't think there's a dominant team in the Southern Conference that that they can't beat. It's just a matter of can they put it all together.
Well, it's a struggle, obviously, as you look at the stats from the Elon game. They threw for 254 yards in the game, but only 116 yards rushing, and they gave up 424 yards to Elon. So obviously they were fortunate to come out, and I think you said this earlier. It's the scoreboard is what tells the tale, not the statistics. Yep. So I would think that they would want to work on being able to run the football. I'm a big believer, Eric, that you got to be able to run the football to win big. And,
yes.
And we see as we assess this all across, and not only these games, but other games that we've looked at in FBS, we got people that are struggling to run the football, and it'll be interesting to see what happens as we move through the rest of the season.
Yeah, if you watched any of the Pitt game yesterday, they called a guy's name Desmond. I'm forgetting his name. Desmond Reed. Thank you. And he played at Western last year. He was, he would have been 1,000-yard back. He got hurt toward the end. But you pull somebody out like that who's obviously good enough to play in the ACC. That really hurts you. One of the receivers is also at Pitt. Your offensive coordinator from last year is at Pitt. So, there's some adjustment for Western Carolina. But to get a win, I think that was important just to get the W. Now, it messes up the whole state as far as, our state teams keep beating each other. We only have one right now that's got a winning record, and that would be Davidson. And they, they haven't really played an FCS team yet other than Georgetown. So, yeah, interesting times. Kind of the wars are beating each other up right now in the FCS ranks.
Davidson did get the win, as Eric alluded to right there, 42-12 over Point on the weekend. In the Division II, lots of good games, but the two that jumped out to me have got to be Wingate and that big 21-7 win over number 12 Delta State. I tell you, the Statesmen or the Fighting Okra, whichever one of the two nicknames you choose to go with, readily have a really strong program coming out of the Gulf South Conference. But Wingate has a historical legacy of football excellence. Absolutely. And they're making a charge this year. I tell you, I'm really looking forward to seeing Catawba play at Wingate when we go to Monroe as part of the Old North State tailgate and traveling sports circus later on in the season. More to come on that in the weeks ahead. But Wingate and Lenore-Rhyne, 2 big wins.
Yeah. We took a little heat at the beginning of the season. We picked Wingate ahead of Lenore-Rhyne in our, our preseason rankings for D2. Lenore-Rhyne they were nationally ranked. Wingate was not. Lenore-Rhyne was picked first in their conference by the coaches. So we took a little heat for putting Wingate in the top spot to start with. But I think they kind of showed why. They've got that defense. It's been awesome under Coach Jordan. Now he elevates to the head coaching job. To hold Delta State to 7 points, Delta State came up here a few weeks ago and pretty much took it to Mars Hill, which is in Wingate's conference. So to be able to do that, that's a big win for them. But then, we put Wingate ahead of Lenore-Rhyne, but Lenore-Rhyne, they're showing they're not really missing a beat either. So that's going to be really fun to watch those two teams all year. If they can stay healthy, they meet in early November And I imagine we're going to head down that way and check that one out, because those are going to be, it could be a nationally ranked battle when that happens in November.
It should be a lot of fun. And when you move now on to the Division III ranks, Everett over Greensboro, Hampton Sydney, Best Brevard, Ferrum over North Carolina Wesleyan. But again, I know, Eric, you just are waiting to talk about the football juggernaut out of West Friendly Avenue, the mighty Quakers, shaking and baking past the Methodist Monarchs 14-12. The best thing about these, Jim, Eric, the best thing about these teams are their nicknames. I mean, we have the Flying Fleet, the Battling Bishops, the Pride, and the Fighting Quakers. I mean, just the disconnect there is just too much.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, and the passion is there. I mean, it's D3 football. Maybe it's forgotten. I think one of the box scores I looked at, I think it was North Carolina Wesleyan, attendance 642. That was it. But yeah, the passion is there. These people love the game. And Guilford, they've got a legit defense, at least so far. They've only allowed 1 touchdown in 8 quarters. They shut out the Pride. They held off the mighty Monarchs to move to 2-0. So yes, definitely a standout. A couple of things to mention, just a stat. North Carolina Wesleyan, they lost, but they've got a kid, Christian Drumgoole, wide receiver, like 200, I think it was 278 yards receiving, something like that.
Wow.
A couple of touchdowns. It was 182 yards, something in that neighborhood after the catch. So, just one of those, you're looking at box scores and you're like, oh, that, you don't see that every day. I keep a running spreadsheet of all the top performances, and that, that one went way to the top real quick. So hats off to them, to Wesleyan. They don't play the mighty Quakers, but we'll see them play some other North Carolina teams later on this season.
It'll be a lot of fun to watch that. And the other thing that we're going to be excited to see right now is the unveiling of the Fab 15. Who are in the top 5 spots this week here at Lusk in the North Carolina Football News Fabulous 15? Right.
Well, here's the thing. We have 34 teams to choose from. Right now, we've only got 6 who are undefeated. I mean, that shows you, Coach, how hard it is to win a game. So our undefeated teams right now, maybe empty calories, but Carolina and Duke are 3-0. Johnson C. Smith at 3-0. Lenore Ryan Wingate, which we talked about them, they're 2-0, and the mighty Quakers are 2-0 as well. So I imagine they're going to factor into, just to me, you got to reward a team you got to win the games. Whoever you play, whoever you roll out there, you got to win them. So those will probably factor into the top. But then we've got a whole bunch of 2-1 squads that we, we'll sort through that as well. Appalachian State, I think, gets credit for, their comeback. NC State dodged a bullet. They're 2-1. Obviously, this week will be huge for them with Clemson on the schedule. But those will be the top teams that we look at, and just trying to sort it all out here before we release it a little bit later in the week.
Coach, when you look back over your career and think about where you are at this point in the season, what are the meetings like? What are you guys talking about? I mean, it's too early to really have any true feel of what your game-like team is with only 3 games. But do you have a pretty good idea by this point in the season of what needs to be corrected, and then maybe how you would use these last few weeks before conference play hits to work on those?
Well, there's no doubt, Mike. You have to assess your team each and every week. Who's playing at a high level, who is not contributing, who's going to get the majority of the playing time, what you're going to do scheme wise. There's a lot of game planning going on right now, and the strategy that you're going to use from an offensive and defensive standpoint and a special team standpoint. You are who you are. By game 3, you are who you are. Yep. But how you're going to apply who you are to the different situations that come up in the game, whether it be 1st and 10, 2nd and long, 2nd medium, 2nd and short, what personnel groupings that you're going to be in, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot going on. It's as we look, there's still a lot of late nights. The nights are whether you're 3-0 or whether you're 2-1 or 0-2 or 1-2. The nights do not get any shorter. Matter of fact, they get longer when you're on the wrong side of that left hand column. So I would be. I'm glad I'm not in some of those rooms tonight. I can tell you that.
That is Coach Jim Collins. He's Eric Lusk from the North Carolina Football News.com, and I'm Mike Waddell. Thanks so much for tuning in to the North Carolina Sports Network in this edition of the fifth quarter. We'll be back next week at the same time, first thing bright and early on Monday, with a look back at the weekend that was in college football here in the Old North State. For now, for all across the Old North State, from Murphy to Manio, I'm Mike Waddell signing off right here on the North Carolina Sports Network.